Hello, and welcome to the Oracle of Light. I'm Shauna DeMelin. I'm a lifelong medium and certified life coach. And making the connection with the afterlife has brought me the greatest joy. Since losing my son, Jack, I have navigated grief, heartache, and despair. And it was through connecting with my son on the other side that my heart began to heal, and I was able to find joy and meaning in my life again. Now, I'm inviting you into this space as I explore the afterlife, the grieving process, and rebuilding after loss. If you'd like to discover the spirit world and how to move through the loss of a loved one or child, you have come to the right place. This is the Oracle of Light. You are listening to the Oracle of Light. I am your host, Shauna DeMelin, and today I have the lovely Reyna Duran with me. She is with the Baby Loss Diary, and I found one of your posts. It was a post that had your merchandise in it. So we'll have to talk about that as well. There was something, I think it was a sweatshirt that I saw, and it was like, oh, for mamas, who is this? So I wanted to reach out. I'm so excited for our conversation today. So welcome.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Now, of course, this isn't a topic that is easy for anyone. And I just so appreciate your vulnerability and your willingness to be here to share with us. So would you share your story? Let us know who you are and your story. Yeah.
Sure. So, I'm Reyna. I am a mom to one son who had passed away. I had him stillborn, back in March of 2021. So he just turned 2. And, he was my firstborn, my only so far still. And I very quickly learned about this new community that, I guess as a mom, you don't ever expect to be a part of. But it had welcomed me with open arms. And I've met so many people through my son, Wes, who I'm really surprised, like, even though he's not here, I have made so many friendships because of him. And I'm so grateful for that. So that's a little bit about that. I started in the midst of my mourning, I guess you could say. I had a really hard time, I guess, expressing my feelings. And I just didn't feel like anybody really understood where I was coming from. And I didn't really know anybody that had lost a child like I had. And so I just felt very alone. And I guess that's where I turned to social media. And I had made an Instagram page called the Baby Loss Diary. And that's where I met a lot of people who live the same life. And I just felt very comfortable in sharing how I felt and what I was going through, and felt more, I guess, I didn't feel alone, and that I felt that I wasn't so isolated and that my feelings were completely normal. And I started a blog because I figured, there's like word count limits on your Instagram posts. This was before Reels came, to be completely honest. So I started a blog, and I started writing about little moments that I wish I could have more easily said to other people. And it just really became a safe haven for me. And I hope other people, I've heard from many people that they've, if not read it, or have referred it to other moms who are going through the same thing, as, or just a way to know that they're not alone. And I just started writing my feelings as an outlet. And this is where I am now.
I love it. Thank you. I love that. And, we talked a little bit about this before, and there are not enough words in the dictionary to describe what it feels like to lose a child, and the emotions and the roller coaster and everything that goes with it. And I'm 10 years in, Jack would have been 10. And 10 years ago, there weren't any resources. I remember going to my doctor and I said, I feel horrible. I don't know what to do. I cry all day. And she said, well, do you want an antidepressant and maybe go talk to somebody? And I just sat there and I thought, that's it. Like that's
right.
it. Wow.
That's all you got. Yeah.
That's all you got.
It's so common for them to do that. Just,
yeah, it really
sad. Here you go. Take a pill, make you feel better.
Right. Here you go. Thanks. Next.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yeah. Okay.
Thanks,
wow.
Next.
Thanks so much. And so I love that you found the writing was a beautiful way to express and to work through that. And I think that that's just so important. And I think it's just beautiful, the community that you've created. And it's a safe place for people to come and to gather. And, as I said, 10 years ago, we didn't have, there wasn't a whole lot with Instagram. And,
right.
There weren't all these different communities. And I think now that everyone's willing to talk about it, right? Like
yes,
they're willing to go there and they're willing to talk about it. And
yes.
I used to think, sometimes people didn't know what to say, so they wouldn't say anything, which kind of makes it even more awkward. And then sometimes they would just say something so ridiculous, right? I mean,
oh my gosh, yes.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure you can relate to that.
Oh my goodness.
Does anything stick out? Mm-hmm.
It's so true. I guess it's just, I don't know. Some people, like you said, they don't know what to say, so they don't say anything at all. And it's really more like you notice. I don't know. I guess I notice. And there's a little bit of awkward tension sometimes. I guess one thing that I've learned is that I've been more comfortable in including Wes in things and almost speaking about him as if he's here, whereas people who don't necessarily know my story won't necessarily ask in that sense, I guess. Like, oh, like, where is he now? Not that that sort of question comes up like all the time, but I don't know, I think I've learned how to integrate him in ways where it doesn't seem so dark, like, oh gosh, she's talking about her baby. Like, don't say anything.
Shh, don't say anything. Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, it's true, right? And I find it so interesting because people would, even to this day, there are new people that come into my world and they're like, oh, who's Jack? And he's my son. He would have been 10 this year. And then just the like their whole demeanor shifts and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And it's interesting to see people's reactions, I think, is what it comes down to. And everyone grieves differently. We talked a bit about
absolutely.
that. I remember sitting there thinking, it's 5 stages. Like there's stages I'm going to go through. And I thought,
no,
like this is incomplete. And I think I looked at the stages and I thought, well, I just did that in 5 minutes, right? Can you talk a little bit about your grief and what it looked like? Yeah.
Well, I think I think my grief, if I were to like explain it, is exactly how someone would assume it would be in the beginning, at least when you lose a child. Like it was horrific. I was very much in shock, numb. I honestly, to be like completely fair, I don't even think I really remember a lot of the details of at least like the first 6 months. Like I was just going through the phases, almost like watching myself outside of my body and just zoned in. And it was hard. I mean, I'm not going to say it was easy, but it was just very difficult. I had a C-section. And so, that as well was like extremely difficult. I was vulnerable. I needed a lot of help from pretty much every aspect. And, it just looked a lot different than what I had hoped. And I was in a really, really dark place. I felt like no one heard me. No one understood me. No one would ever know what it's like to want your child as much as you want them. I mean, there's so many people that were excited for him. And, but I think it's just different coming from a mom. I carried him and I was with him every single day. And then one day for him not to be with me when I like had everything ready for him was just very heartbreaking. So I found comfort in writing and I used my resources. The hospital that I had Weston at, they have a awesome lost mom group that I had joined 2 weeks after I had Wes. I thought it was a little soon, but I just was so desperate to not feel so alone. And it was one of the best things I did. Like, I, to this day, still attend when I can, and I met a lot of moms. And again, I didn't feel so like, oh my gosh, this is weird. Oh my gosh, I'm alone. Like, these moms have gone through the same thing. And, nobody wants to compare their pain, but our pain was all so similar, right? Like, we all did the same thing. We all birthed a child that was not alive. And the trauma, although very different, was very much the same. Like, we all felt that same pain, and we bonded over it, which I know seems a little a little different, but I'm grateful for them, and they definitely helped me out of my rut in some aspects, but found a lot of comfort in writing. I read a lot. I took the time off that I needed, and just kind of try to gather myself and learn to adjust to my new normal. I guess I've learned really quickly what my triggers were and what I did and did not like. And I think looking back on it now that since March was his second birthday, it's the second year, I feel a lot of growth. I think my grief is different than what it was then. Like, I still grieve, but I grieve differently than how I did in the first year. And I'm able to smile more and not feel like I'm going to cry like out of nowhere, which is good. I think it's growth. So
absolutely. And I used to always joke with people, those first couple of years after Jack, it was like I didn't wear mascara because I thought,
oh yeah, you never know.
I never know, right? Like, I could, I would see like a mom with her kids, or I would see a big pregnant belly walk by, or I'd just be like, oh, wow. Okay. And here we go. Right. It was just, I never knew. And I love what you said. I love how you figured out what your triggers are, where your triggers were. Would you share a little about that? Would you share?
Yeah, there were things that I'm sure everyone has felt this. It's like something that just makes you emotional all of a sudden. And one of them was shortly after my C-section, I had to go to the doctor's office. And the OBGYN's office is full of pregnant bellies and just expectant mothers. And it's like, yes, I was devastated. The hospital that I had, Wes had, I couldn't even drive by it without having a panic attack. I worked at a hospital as well at the time. And that was where I was when I had found out that, I got the feeling that he was not okay. And I had a really hard time going back to work, to the point where my husband had to drive me before I even had to go to work, so I can get that exposure therapy pretty much to like try to work my way back into where I was. And it was really hard. I mean, there are triggers that I didn't want to face, but I had to. And then there's some that just come out of nowhere, where you see a kid that should be the same age as your child, and there's nothing you can do about it. But I still get like that sometimes. Like, I still feel triggered in some aspects. Before, I used to burst into tears. I would, just like you said, like you didn't know when to wear mascara, I would cry. I mean, the great thing about being, I guess, an individual too, is that I was able to just walk away. I learned that when I am uncomfortable, it is okay to walk away and do what you need to do for yourself. And I still do. I hold true to that. Like, if I am not comfortable, I'm not comfortable. And it's something that I've learned that, some people may not understand. And it's not meant to be rude. It's just, I am not ready to be vulnerable in that sense, maybe in front of these people, or I just don't want to, right? Like, it's an emotion that I don't want to visit right now. So let me just take a step back. But I feel like, my triggers have definitely, kind of like my grief, they ebb and they flow and they grow and they change. And one day something may not affect me, and the next day it may. I don't know.
Yeah, it's true, right? Like, it's so true. I love what you said. I mean, it's just you never really know. No. And I think that we're always growing and changing and shifting. And I surprised someone a couple of years ago and I said, it's not something that I'll ever get over.
Yeah.
It's something that I've learned to manage. I've learned to live with. And I wasn't the same person anymore. Like after everything that I went through, it was just like, okay. It was like getting to know a whole new me and a whole new life. And again, it's, I was chatting with someone else earlier today about this. And I mean, I've lost grandparents and I've lost, relatives and friends and loved ones. And the grief from losing a child, there aren't enough words in the dictionary. There are not enough ways to describe that pain. And and when I meet, another mom who has lost a child, it's like there's this connection, this bond. And it's kind of this instant thing. It's like, oh, hello.
Yeah.
It's like you don't even have to say anything. It's like, I get you.
Yeah.
I get you. And it's, and it's certainly not a club any of us would want to be a part of. And I think we're just making the most of it. We're making the best of a situation like that. And it's,
absolutely.
It is, right? And so thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's those different triggers, right? And I think it's so important that we have to be our own advocate.
Absolutely.
You're saying, I don't feel good. I need to remove myself. I don't want to talk about this. This isn't
right.
And it's interesting because I look at how losing Jack has changed who I am. And it's almost like, not in a mean way, but it's almost like my level of tolerance is gone down. It's like,
yeah, I agree.
Is that your final answer? Is that your final answer? Did you just really say that? And I kind of sit with it and it was like, and I was so used to being, I guess, a people pleaser before everything happened with Jack. I was so used to, keeping the peace and everybody's happy and we're all having a good time and and then I find that was one of the big things that shifted. It was just like, wow, I don't even know why I'm here with you. I don't even know. I'm not even sure. And it was interesting because it was just, I think having your heart hurt like that, and being so vulnerable and finding your way through something that is so, so difficult and just so heartbreaking. I think there's a different level of resiliency, maybe. Like I'm more protective of myself. I
definitely think it's more protective. Like, you're on guard. You're on defense always. Like, no. I guess it's just you're protecting yourself. You don't want to get hurt again. And I think that's a very valid and normal response in a situation like ours. Like, you don't want to get hurt. No one wants to get hurt, but you don't want to get hurt again.
No. And I mean, not that I would ever, at this stage of the game, I mean, not that I would ever experience, losing another child. When you have felt the depths of despair and heartache and just, it's like your whole world is ripped away from you. When you have experienced that and you've worked your way back from that, it's like, you're different. There are a lot of women I've chatted with that were diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, depression. I mean, there are just so many different avenues it can take. And there was one mom that I met years ago and, she had miscarried and, within a few months, she's like, okay, we got to get going again. We got to do this. And she never looked at it. Never looked at it. She never shed a tear, never talked about it. She was like, no, we have to do this. This has to happen. It was interesting, right? Because no one grieves the same way. There's no book that says, hey, here, this is what you can expect. No. It's just, oh my goodness. No, absolutely not.
And everybody's different. Like everybody takes it completely different. Some people choose not to talk about it and some people do. And that's completely fine. Like that's just, if that's what you're comfortable with, then so be it, right? Like that's to each their own. Like,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. If it's something that you want to share, then that's wonderful. And if not, that's okay too.
Right.
And now, would you share with us the bear? Would you share the story?
Oh, yeah.
Of the bear? Yeah, I love this.
Yeah. So I, shortly after he had passed away, I found a company. They're called Molly Bears. And they make remembrance bears for parents who have had a stillborn or lost their child. And I don't remember the weights, but they're able to make them pretty small. And then I think they go up to 8 pounds. And so I ordered a bear and you tell them, you know, just a couple things that you like and like things that you remember your child by. So I put his name, and then we had planned to paint his nursery like an olive green and just like very like neutral browns. So I told them, oh yeah, I like the greens and I like the browns. And I was on their website and I had looked them up and I had seen different bears because they're all very different. Like some are like long furry bears, some are shorter like haired bears. And I had seen one that specifically his little like snout area had a smile. And so I had asked for a bear that had a smile. And so you wait. I don't even remember how long I waited. It was probably about a month because they only opened, I don't know if it's still the same, but at the time they only opened the ordering process one day or a couple days out of the month. And it's like the middle of the month. So it's very tight, like time frame. And yeah, when we had got our West Bear, we call him West Bear.
West Bear.
Yeah, and he had cute little smile. He had the smile on his face. He's a brown bear, and he's got a green patch that says his name on it, and a little bow. And he weighs exactly what Wes weighed when he was born. He was 2 pounds 11 ounces, and it's so comforting. Like he is, you know, he is him to me. Like my West Bear is my Wes, and in the beginning I literally took him everywhere with me. Like he stayed with me when I moved from the bed to the couch. Like he was on my hip. Now just because I don't want him to get like ruined, he like sits up on our library. But I take him with me like for his birthday. We take him where we go. We always go to West Beach is what we call it. And he comes with us and he holds a balloon and social occasions. But he is a good, I don't know, like when I just feel like I need a little something from Wes, I just hold him and it's just like, you know, so great to like feel him.
I love that. I love that. And I will have all of your contact info in the show notes. And
yeah,
you have a picture of him on your Instagram.
oh yes, yes.
He's so
I have
sweet.
him all over the place.
So sweet. I love that. That is such a beautiful way to have our child closer. I mean, that is just so beautiful, right? Like, I just think that that just warms my heart. It's just, oh my goodness, right? Like that is so beautiful. I love that. Now, and please share about the merchandise because you've got shirts.
Oh yeah.
And yeah.
I totally forgot. So last Mother's Day, I mean, like still now, like I still try to find ways that I can give back or, you know, do something to embrace motherhood. Like it's so hard. And that was like one of the blogs that I had talked about is that it's hard for me. And I mean, it's gotten, I guess, a little bit easier, but in a sense, like I know I'm a mom, right? And my closest friends and family and people that know me know that I'm a mom. But from the outside, like anybody else wouldn't know that I'm a mom, right? Because I don't have a baby. I don't have a physical baby here with me to prove my motherhood. And in the beginning, I was really upset about that. Like it really hurt me that I did not have him here to prove it, but yet why, like it shouldn't be that I need a child on my hip to prove that I'm a mom. Like I am very much a mom as anybody else, right? Like I did all of it. I went to the doctor's appointments. I birthed him, you know? So I just wanted to find ways to give back and like embrace motherhood. Like I was really I felt like an imposter at some points. I had a lot of mom clothes that I was ready to wear, you know, the ones that said mama, motherhood, like boy mom.
Yeah.
And I was just so upset. Like I put everything in a box. I packed it all away shortly after we had come home from the hospital because I didn't want to see it. Like that was a trigger for me. And I wanted to be included. And so I like to sew. I brought an embroidery machine and I started making sweaters. It was for last Mother's Day. I made shirts and some bags and I just put it out there on my page and I was like, hey, if anybody wants some, like, let me know. I'll make you one. And so, yeah, I had a few people reach out and I made sweaters a lot for my family. And I wear them. I wore them my first Mother's Day. You know, I bring them out every year for Mother's Day. And I don't know, I just felt like it was a way for me to not feel like an imposter, because I feel like there's also a lot of moms out there who maybe are like me, who have not had another baby and, you know, still moms and like to be included and not like looked at funny when you're wearing a mom shirt and they're like, well, where's your where's your kid?
Child, yeah.
Right. And so in our safe space, I was like, this is something that I'd love to make for, you know, anybody who wants it. So yeah, that's what I did last Mother's Day. That was my that was my little venture.
I love that because you had bags and
Yeah,
t-shirts.
I was on a roll.
There were so many beautiful things. I think that is just, that is so, it's so beautiful. And it's true, right? Like and that's something that I think society just sort of brushes aside. It's like, oh, well, people said just such ridiculous things to me. They were like,
Oh, yeah.
you think, well, you have Emma, or it just wasn't meant to be, or, you could adopt, or they would just say all these crazy, crazy things. You wrote about this. It was what not to say. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, we've heard some horrible things. And I mean, I like to think that these things are said they're not said with like bad intentions, right? Like just people don't know what to say. And but sometimes like, and that's where it's like a very like weird line to tread, right? Like there's sometimes where it's like saying nothing is, not the greatest thing, but also at the same time, I almost rather not hear, I would rather hear nothing than hear the at least, or, like things, you should be grateful and all this stuff. And again, like, we're not here to compare, like, sure, like, I guess, but at the same time, it's like, it's still, if you were on the other side of this, you would not want to hear that. And, I've heard so many platitudes that it's like, especially in the beginning, where in the beginning, I would say a lot of it went way over my head because, again, still too numb to kind of like comprehend what's going on, not really focused. Everything went in one ear, out the other, just trying to survive at that point. But as I got further along and I started to really like, I guess, like protect myself and take things in, I was like, my God, like, don't say that. That is not okay. And, I think like I'm grateful that I'm not a confrontational person because I feel like you said, we've changed, right? Like there's a whole different, like the person I am today is definitely not the person I was before I had Wes. And I would say that I'm more like, well, non-confrontational, and I'm kind of like quiet in a sense, like when I'm really like out doing my own thing. And if someone were to tell me that, like, I wouldn't say anything. And so now I feel like I feel more confident in myself and saying like, hey, like that is not okay. Like you don't want to, like, I get it. And you're probably coming from a very genuine place, but you don't say that to someone who's lost a baby or a child, or, it's just, there's better things to say. Right. Just kind of like think about it, right? Like think about what you're going to say first.
Right. Do you remember anything? Does anything stick out? Do you remember anything that someone had?
Gosh, there was a good one that I had written about, but I honestly can't remember off the top of my head. But I mean, I've gotten a lot of, well, at least, I had a very complicated pregnancy. I have autoimmune conditions that make, a lot of things go bad. And there's a lot of stuff going on. I was a high risk patient. It was a lot, but some of the ones that were very common were that at least you're young, you could try again, at least you got, I mean, I didn't have another child, but I had my dogs and my husband. Well, at least you got a supportive husband. And it's like, yeah, but we will never have Wes. Like, he is what I want. Like, I will never have him. Like, there's no at least to that. And I mean, I'm grateful. I'm so grateful and so thankful that I am okay, right? Like I did the pregnancy, and that although it turned out not at all how I wanted it to, I'm grateful that in the end that I am okay, but that's not the at least. Like in a perfect world, I would be okay and Wes would be here and we would be one big happy family. And, people don't think about it that way, but again, they don't know the ins and outs. And I don't think, I always try to give them the benefit of the doubt. I doubt I've met a person that said anything where it was meant to be malicious. Like, I know that's not the case. It's just,
Yeah.
people don't think before they speak.
Mm-mm.
And it's hurtful sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It really is, right? And it's just, yeah, it's and I love to, that's part of why I do what I do, right? Like, it's just, no, this is what I experienced, and I have this loss, and it's a real loss. This is a real loss. I actually had there was a session I had with a reader. It's in the Akashic records, and so the Akashic records are like a library of your soul, so to speak.
Oh,
And
wow.
I booked this session. I was really curious. And the first thing that she had said is, she said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for your loss." And I said, "Oh," and she said, yeah. She said, "You experienced something so profoundly painful that it
Whoa.
is forever in your records for your soul." And I said, and of course I'm crying. I'm like, "Oh
Wow.
my God, what is this? How do you know this?" And
Yeah.
she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Yeah, I lost my son." And she was just like, "Oh, wow." She said, "I am just so sorry." And so it was interesting because it allowed me to have a voice with it. It was like, this is a real loss. Like, I didn't need someone else to validate it, but it's almost like it gave me the confidence to say, yeah, and acknowledge.
Right.
That
And
was
I
a
think,
real
like,
loss.
with the child loss and, like, stillbirths, like with Wes, like, I mean, I was pregnant in the midst of COVID. So of course I was pretty sheltered, right? Like, I didn't want to go out. Like, I was doing everything I could to protect myself and him. And so not a lot of people seeing me, right? Like, to make it more real. Um, and I think that's also part of it too, is like, yeah, there's a few pictures of me, right? Like, okay, she was pregnant, but no one got to see him. I myself and my husband, we don't necessarily share a lot of pictures of him, and that's just not out of, like, I guess we just choose not to, because they're sacred to us, and
Yeah.
they're special to us, and, like, people closest to us have seen him. But we don't, that's just something that we've both, like, I guess not mutually agreed, or just haven't felt compelled to show his face, although he is very much a real person, right? Like, he was a human. He had a beating heart. He had all 10 fingers and 10 toes. He had hair. Like, it was just everything. And so I think because some the outside world didn't see him, it makes him less real.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
he was very real to me. Like, he kicked my belly. Like,
That's
there's other things. But again, unless you or know us, or, like, were around us during that time, no one would know, right? And so
no.
it just makes it feel less real. But he really is very much, he was here. Like,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I always tell moms, you will always be that child's mother.
right.
It's etched in your heart forever. That is not ever going to change. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, it just, that it is, it is what it is. And I love what you said. It's real. And with the work that I do, I have a lot of people, not as much anymore. Like, over the years, it's just, I think I embody it so much. I'm like, whatever. If it resonates, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. We can still be friends, right? Like,
Right.
I just share the information, and if it resonates, then people go with it. And I would have people say to me, "Well, how do you know that this is real? And how do you know da, 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 da?" And I used to always say, "Well, how do you know you're breathing oxygen? Did you buy some at Costco? Like, really? Like, let's." Right. And everyone's experience is their own, and everyone has different filters, and everyone has, like you said, I mean, not everyone wants to talk about their loss, and not everyone wants to, share everything. And then there are other people that share everything. Like, there are videos and pictures, and it's like, oh, wow. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, they are putting everything out there, and that's okay. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
for whatever you need to do. Um, I love how I love how you talk about destigmatizing baby loss. I
Oh,
love
yes.
that. I think that's so powerful.
Yes. I honestly, like, I think, and that's one thing I want to be honest, right? Like, I think, especially like with my community that I know, like, we're young, like, I've never, like I said, I have never seen anybody that I know lose a child. So it's not all sunshines and rainbows for everybody. And it sucks. It sucks so bad that, like, I'm the one that got picked to go through this, right? I wouldn't want anybody to go through it, but it's like, well, I got picked to go through it. And so I am doing my best to help, I guess, others feel comfortable with approaching me about something. God forbid they have to go through that, but they have someone who's been through it, who's not afraid to talk about it, in a sense that, like, like, I'm here and, like, this is how I felt. And, like, I hope that if you're in that situation, like, God forbid, but you could come to me and, we could talk about it, like, in a comfortable, safe environment. Um, and I think there is a big stigma on it. And I think there's a lot of, like, almost like shame, like, how dare you, talk about babies dying. It's like, but it's true. Babies die, and
Yep.
it's not it's not pretty. It's really not pretty. And it's like, no one talks about, like, the moms, like, everything that they go through after, like, depression, anxiety. Like, I'm still dealing with my anxiety. Like, it's something that forever shapes you and, like, changes you. And I mean, too, with the dads, like, no one talks about the dads. Don't get me started. Like, and so,
Yep.
like, I think it's a lot on everybody, and you're just trying to navigate and feel normal, but also, like, not let go of what and but also, like, trying to move forward. There's a very, like, again, that line, you're trying to, like, teeter that line.
Yep.
And it's really hard sometimes. But yeah, I don't think it shouldn't be something shameful. Like, they were children, there are children, you're a mom, you're a dad. And if they were alive, it would be very different, but it wouldn't be shameful, right? But now, because they're not here, it's like, oh, well, you shouldn't talk about it. No, it's 2023. I'll talk about my son if I would like to.
Yes.
Like,
this is his name. This is who he is, right? Like, it's so important. The majority of the women that I work with, it's always been like that. My practice has always been primarily women, which is fine. And then in this last year, I've had a few women say, can my husband come too? Or, and of course, and I'm just, so I've opened it up to everybody. I'm like, I just communicate with those sweethearts on the other side. And yeah, the last group that I presented to, it was half dads. And it was like,
wow,
they have lost as well. I mean, yes, we have, there's so many physical things, right? I mean, that is, it touches every part of you, right? Like, it's just, oh, well, my baby died. It's, well, no, that's part of my spirit and my heart and my physical body and my mental state and my emotions and my spirit. And it's just, there's so many different components to it. And I think that, like I said earlier, I mean, I always say to people, there aren't enough words to describe how I felt or how I feel or what it feels like. You cannot describe that. Like I say to people, it's like my heart just shattered into a million pieces, and I didn't know it was ever going to be okay. And it's not something that you can, just put on a shelf and think, oh, maybe I'll deal with it later. It's just, it impacted every aspect of my life. Did you find it as well? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like, I think there's just so much. I definitely think my emotions, like, like we talked about, like, I'm not the same person that I was. I know it, I feel it. And I think, I'm still learning. And I just think that it really affects you in more ways than I would have ever imagined, right? Like, I wouldn't have ever guessed that it would have been the way it is. And it's hard, and it's very hard to describe. Like, it's a wave. Like, some days are good, some days are bad, and some days I, like, I'm triggered more, and some days I'm fine. And then there's, random things pop up and I'm like, oh my God, like I just can't today. And
Yeah.
there's just, you just know, you don't know. And
Mm.
I think it, like we talked about before, it's all very different for all of us. Like my husband too, like I think talking about the dads, like they're totally like forgotten about, which is so sad. Like I had a lot of people ask about me, but not very many ask about him. And, um, I think thinking back on it, I'm very lucky he was able to stay home with me for at least a month, like a little bit over a month. And we had that time to grieve and mourn together. But of course, because I birthed a baby, like I stayed out longer than he did. And so he had to go back to work. And, he was thrown back into his normal very quickly. And kind of had to suppress like those feelings, right? Like to get back into work and like kind of think, okay, like we gotta, pay the bills, we gotta do this, we're back to where we were. And I'm grateful because we have been very open and honest. And I think that's something that ultimately like brought us closer together, because there's times where something like this just tears you apart. And like I'm so thankful for him, because we found each other more in the midst of all this. And, we're just open and honest about our feelings and our grief. And we recognize that we both grieve very differently. And, his emotions should not be forgotten. And I think that's something that a lot of, even when I talk to other lost moms that I've met, like through the years, they're like, yeah, well, my husband, and it's like, nobody talks about them. Like, do they want to get together? Like,
Yeah.
So
It's so true, right? And I'm noticing more groups now for dads. And
yes,
yeah, and mine is, my meetup group is it's open to everyone. It's
it's a great way for everybody to feel included. And I think it's also something that like you grieve together, right? Like even though you grieve completely different, but you're grieving together. And his relationship with Wes was very different than the relationship that I had with him, right? Like he, in the midst of COVID, like he never went to any appointments with me because he couldn't. Like it's not he didn't want to be there, but he never got to see the ultrasound live. Like I had videos and stuff, thank God for technology, but he never got to go and experience that. And same with like, me, like I carried him. So of course I felt him. I had all the like ins and out, like mother's intuition, they say, but like it was just so very different. And like he recognizes that as well. Like my husband knows, like my relationship with Wes was very different than the one that he had with him. And he also knows that like, and he's the first to always say like her grief is very different than mine because she carried him, right? And so like, but then at the same time, like his grief is also, it's not that it's not valid. Like it's still there. Like you were his dad. You saw my belly. We messed with the kicks. Like you're poking him back too. Like you had moments in it as well. And I think it's just dads need to be recognized too. Like they very much grieve just like moms do. And even though they may not be crying, like some moms do, they still are hurt by the situation, and it still leaves a lasting impact on them as well. So can't forget about the dads.
absolutely. And I love everything you said. It's true. I mean, it's yeah, I mean, women are maybe more vocal and we cry and there's this outward expression. And again, it's not to say that we do, men and women grieve differently. And I think there's so many extra layers to that, right? I mean, there's just so many extra layers to it for a woman, but you're right. I mean, the men, we wouldn't have been there if it hadn't been for
right. You're right.
Mr.
So
Man.
like, it's just like, I feel like people just forget them in the midst of all of this,
Mm-hmm.
And they're just like there, but like he had to go to work before I did. Like there was no way if I had to go to work, a month after all that, I would have been even worse than what I was going back 4 months later. So it's like, there's just, they hold it down, and I am so grateful. And like, I've learned so much from him, and just how he grieves and how he overcomes his situations. And like, when I feel like I'm not overcoming something, I look to him and I'm like, how do you do it? Because I need some of that.
I need some. Yes, please. Right. Aw, well, he's your rock. And, it's beautiful that you have each other. And I love how you shared that, it's brought you closer together. Like, it's something that you've navigated together. I mean, and in the midst of a pandemic as well.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
oh gosh.
my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, that was, no one liked that time, but it was, we're always in lockdown, right? Like, it was just me, him, and Wes, like, and our dog.
Yeah.
Always on the couch watching movies. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so much that goes along with that. Could you share a little bit of your self-care ideas?
yeah. So I like to shop. That is like my way of therapy, like retail therapy. when I really need a quick pick me up, that's something that I do. I've recently, not really recently, but in the last year, I've gotten back into reading. I just think there's something like, there's a lot of books. Like, right when I first had lost Wes, I read It's Okay to Not Be Okay. And I honestly could probably go back and read it, because again, just very numb and not really focused, but it was something to kind of like help get me out of what I was dealing with. And I found it comforting even now. Like, I've read a lot more in the past year than I have ever before. I think I just found a new love for it. And I think it's, again, like a way to kind of like escape in a sense. And then aside from that, like, I'm also really big in therapy still. Like, I think, therapy is not for everybody, but I think for me, it definitely helps, like, to talk to someone that's not biased, like, just doesn't know anything in the past or like my history, and just being able to like work through those moments that maybe that I haven't been able to like really work through because avoidance, like no one wants to go back there, right? And I think that has really helped me just kind of manage my, like, in the beginning, definitely the depression, even now my anxiety. Like, I think I hate to say it, but like the birth and the trauma and has given me a lot of health anxiety, and like I've just been trying to learn to deal with it, right? So also I will never deny a good facial or like a massage, so, spa day.
Yes.
So I think, finding those little outlets that like you like for yourself. Everybody's, again, different, but I found like reading has been such a joy for me. Like, just kind of experiencing a different world in a book it's fun.
Like, it really is, right? And like, you nailed it. It gives us an opportunity just to go somewhere else and just,
yes.
Yeah, just, and not that we're trying to escape, but it's just a little bit more of a distraction. Maybe it just sort of quiets those thoughts and the feelings, and it just allows us to, maybe it is an escape, right? Like, it's just,
yeah. Like, sometimes it's a lot, right? And I think, sometimes in going through the day and like other factors coming up and work and all this other stuff, I just think sometimes you need to escape. So
it's true,
that's
right?
okay.
And it's okay, right? Like, I think it's just so important to, it's almost like, there have been women over the years that I've worked with, and it's almost like I was giving them permission. I was giving them permission, be angry. God, I was angry at God. I was angry at my husband. I was angry at everyone. I was like, how dare you? This was not the plan. And I'm a planner. I'm a planner.
Yeah.
I was like, this
Same
is what
here.
Same here. Look like. And
I had a plan.
Plot twist.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, are you kidding me? Oh my God. As a lot of women have come to see me over the years, and they usually don't bring up that they've lost a baby, and they don't really bring it up, and then it just comes up, and it's there's just this sense of relief, I find, that they can share it and they're not being judged. They're not being told to stop talking about it. They're not, like it's not an uncomfortable conversation that I can have with someone. I can just hold space and just allow it to be whatever it needs to be, and just honoring the experience, honoring the loss. And, I always tell people grief and joy, they commingle. There are days
they do.
there are days when I'm happy and joyous and things are running along smoothly. And then every now and again, something will creep up. Where was I the other day? I was at the mall. And there was a little boy running ahead of me, and like my son, I see him growing up in heaven. So whenever he comes into chat, he looks like a 10-year-old. And there was a little boy that ran right in front of me, and he turned, he looked at me, and he smiled, and my heart was just like, oh. And he was like, hey, blah 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 blah, and he was showing me something on his phone. He goes, look at this, da, 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 da. And I said, wow, that's pretty cool. He goes, right. And then he ran off. And after he left, I thought, that's what I always say. I always say, right. And I was just like, just for a split second there, it was like, oh my God, what would my life be like in this moment if that was my son here?
Yeah.
Like, what would that, like, I just, and it's, again, I'm 10 years in. So I've grieved him and mourned him, and, I've reconciled all of that. I've, begrudgingly accepted it. This is what it is. And I'm blessed to, do what I do, and I can connect with him and experience him and chat with him and know that he's safe and he's with my other loved ones. And it's just, there's still moments. I mean, I think about him every day, all the time.
Yeah.
There's still moments where I think, it would have been so cool to have him here, to show him this, or I wonder what his soul's expression would have been. I wonder, what would he have played hockey? Like, would he have, would he have been a mama's boy? Yes. I like to think so, right. And it's it's all of those different things. And, I can think about those things now, and just, it's a tender spot in my heart, but it also brings me joy, because it's like, that was real. Like, that love will never die.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Every year, the last 2 years, I guess, well, the last couple of years, we get Christmas ornaments, and we've made it like a thing where, what do we think Wes would be into this year? And so I think it's just something, he has his own tree. And so every year I'll have a new ornament. And for that year, what do we think he would really enjoy? Right. And I think I'm excited to kind of see, like, as he gets into like the teens, like, what do we think he would be into? Right.
Yeah. Would he be absolutely all over the place, or would he, highly, this intellect that always had his nose in a book, or would he be a mad scientist? Right. Like, it's kind of, it's fun. Right. And so I thank you for sharing that with me, because there are not a lot of people that I can have that conversation with, because some people think it's morbid or it's weird or okay, whatever.
Well, I like to think he like ages, right? Like we age, like, and I mean, we celebrate his birthday. Like, we take that day to be together and sing to him happy birthday, and like acknowledge, that was his day. And I like to think, like, what would he be like? And like, right now he would be 2. And I mean, like, what are 2-year-olds into? Like, Cocomelon? Like, what do you, I don't know. And I wish I did know, but I think that is part of the joy in it, is that I get to imagine what I think he would be. And one day, I'll be lucky enough to like know, and he'll be able to tell me like, well, you're right, or no, Mom, you're wrong. Like,
so far off base.
Yeah.
Right. I love that.
Dinosaurs. Okay. So cool.
Okay. We're going to roll with that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I am just so grateful for our time today. Would you tell everyone how they can find you? I know you're on Instagram. You've got
yeah. I am on Instagram at the Baby Lost Diary, one word. I have a blog. It's thebabylostdiary.com. So yeah, you can find me there. I try to get on there as often as I can. I'm really into the stories these days. I mean, I feel like everybody is, right? Like, that's what's going on social media. So
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a public site, and you could just read up and check in. And again, like I said, my DMs are always open. So if anybody wants to talk about their babies or just anything in general, like I said, I like to sew. Always looking
Right?
for new tips. I like to read.
Yep. Absolutely.
Tell
And
me a book you love.
exactly, right? Like it's just, yeah, I absolutely love that. And we will have all of that, all of your contact info in the show notes.
Cool.
And again, thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your sweet boy, your Weston. He's
Yes, thank you for
such a
having me.
sweetheart. Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. And yeah, what else? What else is possible? What other magic can we create moving forward?
Yeah, definitely it's not, for one, it's not shameful, and baby loss is completely normal, unfortunately, and no one should feel alone or isolated.
Exactly. I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Reyna, for sharing your heart, your baby loss journey, and your sweet boy Weston with all of us. All of Reyna's contact info will be in the show notes. Be sure to follow Reyna on Instagram at The Baby Loss Diary, and you can visit her website, thebabylossdiary.com, for more information and her beautiful blog posts. You can find me on Instagram at Shauna DeMellon Medium, or visit my website at livealifeyoulove.org, where you'll find my offerings, including my Growing Up in Heaven program, where you'll find peace in your heart as you learn to make the connection with your child in spirit. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time here on the Oracle of Light.